The Peace River, near the border of Alberta and the Northwest Territories. A small group of wilderness enthusiasts begins a 10-day trip into the heart of Wood Buffalo National Park. Spooked by the new arrivals, a wolf races along the riverbank. It's an auspicious start for the group. Their wilderness interpreter is Lou Carbon, a wolf biologist who has worked in the park for 14 years and grown to love it.
And this is a fantastic area. It's the quietness, it's the biological diversity. It's like a retreat. It's a place to really reflect and think about life.
Carbon will share that passion with the tour over the next 10 days, enjoying the wilderness, scouting for birds. Hoping for an encounter with the buffalo, while there are still buffalo here to see. Wood Buffalo National Park invites superlatives. The largest park in North America, home to one of the largest free-roaming herds of the largest animals in North America. Buffalo that have endured perhaps the largest ever dose of human intervention in a wilderness species. 80 years of study and slaughter, help and harassment.
It's a comedy of errors, I think. It's the lack of foresight, and it's the constant political pressures that seem to bear on decisions.
But there's nothing humorous about the latest plan for intervention, a plan to kill the buffalo in this park and start over. The story begins 80 years ago when almost 7,000 buffalo from a park in central Alberta are shipped north in rail cars and barges rented from the same provincial politician who champions the idea. It was the first of many millions of tax dollars that would be spent on the buffalo to save them, and hundreds would not even survive the trip to the park created and named for them.
Some of the sores on the hips was as big as that big with maggots. They're rubbing them together on the barge. They try to get them in as fast as they can.
Frank Laviolette grew up with the buffalo and stories from native elders about the animal's arrival.
And the ones that couldn't hardly walk when they got off the barge, two buffalo rangers, they're calling them these, shooting the bad ones, get rid of the misery.
It was an ugly start, a criminal waste for native people like Laviolette, who consider the buffalo sacred. People haven't helped the buffalo much. In the south, they pastured them with cattle infected with brucellosis and tuberculosis, and the buffalo caught the diseases. Still, they decided not to test all the animals shipped, so the diseases spread to northern buffalo. In spite of that, the north proved fertile ground. Within 30 years, there were 12,000 buffalo roaming the park. Evidence of the adaptability and strength that Lou Carbon so admires in the buffalo.
And I'm amazed how resilient they are to natural changes, be it flooding, be it wolf predation, be it winter severity. They seem to prevail, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for how this actually happens and how well they're able to adapt to changes. They can deal with whatever the environment seems to be handing them.
You only have to walk a few kilometers across this broken, uneven, sedgy ground to gain a whole new level of respect for this park's bison. There are documented cases of them running 40 kilometers in a stretch. They might be carrying disease, but they're awfully tough critters. In spite of that toughness, people felt compelled to intervene again and again in the lives of the buffalo. In early years, sharpshooters culled the herd to provide meat for the local missions. Wolves in the park were killed as well to maintain the meat supply. As the buffalo spread, so did the diseases they carried. That brought the first proposal to destroy the herd in the 1950s using the Royal Canadian Air Force. When that was judged too radical, parks officials began a random testing program, slaughtering animals found to be infected. In the early 60s, anthrax broke out in the herd. Human intervention became even more intense, and public investment soared. The evidence of that still towers over the open meadows near a place called Sweetgrass Station.
So when the bison roundups were carried out, they would take helicopters and approach the herds. And
The
gently move
fences
them
run for
towards the
kilometers,
fence.
built strong and high for buffalo roundups.
These fences were exceptionally expensive to build.
A small town was created to house the construction and roundup crews.
At one time, there were about 18 buildings along here. There was a row of buildings on one side and another on the other side. And there were a large number of people from Fort Chip and Fort Smith would work here in the roundup operation for the anthrax.
Each time we came out here, we've seen a number of wolves.
Brad Burke, a Métis guide, grew up around native families who found work here. The money was welcome. The way the buffalo were treated was not.
They really went through a lot. You know, the government been chasing them around, herding them into corrals with choppers. You know, many died over that. And then after all the effort that they put into inoculating this and killing all these buffalo, running them in here, then they decide, well, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do something else. You know, to me, it's crazy. Like, you know.
The end of the roundups was supposed to usher in a new ethic. The buffalo would be allowed to fend for themselves. No more wolf kills, no more inoculation programs. Nature would determine if disease was a threat to the herd. That ethic didn't last. In just a few years, a new kind of buffalo hunt would begin. A hunt for answers to human worries that would divide communities and once again threaten the herds of Wood Buffalo Park. If buffalo have nightmares, they probably involved helicopters. For the past 20 years, choppers have been the transportation of choice for study after study of the buffalo in Wood Buffalo Park. Chasing the dwindling herds across an open, often frozen landscape in the name of better understanding the buffalo and the diseases that have haunted them since their arrival.
Now, this is just a goddamn training park for young biologists from the world.
Frank Laviolette figures the buffalo are paying a huge price in this hunt for understanding, even the ones who escape the net.
Even catching the buffalo, you kill a lot driving them. Lots. They don't realize there's 49 other buffalo that run for 7-8 miles and catch cold on TV. That's what I'm talking about. They run with their tongues hanging out like a dog. That's where they catch cold. And sometimes the nose plug up pretty fast with ice. And when when that happens, they're dead.
And the buffalo have been dying. Where once 12,000 roamed these grasslands, there are now perhaps 3,000. It would be easy to blame the diseases: tuberculosis that limits the animal's lung capacity, brucellosis that can cause cows to abort their calves.
It's just another anvil on the back of this herd, and they're doing very well with that anvil on their back to try to adjust to the environment
Carbon argues diseases were here when buffalo numbers were high, too. He figures it's the growing number of wolves that keep buffalo numbers in check, and that's how it should be.
As far as these bison are concerned, they're coping very well with that. They are leveling out at a 2,000 to 3,000, and that seems to be a dynamic equilibrium around that level. And so this is actually a very desirable situation. It's a natural situation, and the system is working very well as far as the park is concerned.
But now it's interests outside the park that want to intervene. Alberta's cattle industry is moving ever closer to the park and its reservoir of disease. That creates the nightmare scenario of TB in cattle and the loss of Canada's international reputation as a disease-free cattle exporter. There's another worry a few hundred kilometers north of the park, where a growing herd of disease-free buffalo has been established. There's at least the possibility TB could spread to them. Those fears were responsible in 1990 for the second recommendation to kill off the buffalo.
How in the hell are we going to live? How much are we going to put up with?
The recommendation to kill the herd and start again was seen as the white man's answer, based on the white man's science. In the end, the only agreement was that more information was needed, more federal investment, more studies on the buffalo and their diseases. There's little question we've gotten better at conducting the studies. No tranquilizers now, except for the largest animals. It's a point of pride for researcher Francois Messier.
And again, I stress that not using drug, it's really reducing the risk of mortality for you.
That seems a hollow advance given the conclusion of Messier's 5-year study. Once again, it says killing these buffalo is the only way to get rid of disease. Moreover, it should be done soon.
How much risk could you take? Right now, it's a growing risk, and therefore we should not expect that we have 20 years in front of us.
Same solution third time around, only this time native people are raising a new herd of disease-free animals right next to the park. It's a project that began with another helicopter invasion of the buffalo herds, this time during calving season.
Okay, we'll go get number one.
Newborn calves are rushed into the chopper before they have a chance to contract TB and brucellosis from other herd members. Don Balsley is the band chief. He insists they never intended to create a replacement herd for the park, but there's little question this project will affect federal thinking. Healthy buffalo close to the park and available for a price.
If they're going to do something with those diseased animals, if they're going to eradicate them or isolate them and they want to look for fresh, clean animals to repopulate areas such as that or other areas, then we're most definitely open for discussions on that subject.
Back in Wood Buffalo Park, Brad Burke paddles down Sweetgrass Creek. He believes the native perspective on buffalo is changing, led by younger leaders who grew up in a white man's system. And he has native friends who are well aware there's big money to be made.
He's a good friend of mine, and that was his thought. He wasn't worried about repopulating the woods with a clean herd. He was saying, wow, I could be rich here. And the bottom line is I really personally think it's $1,
If the decision is made to kill the buffalo that are in the park, how much money is that going to cost?
Oh, it's, I wouldn't know. The estimate in 1990 was some $20 million and upwards.
Money to hunt down the herd. Money to process animals. Money to raise the new buffalo.
It's a difficult figure to get a handle on, I suppose, at this time.
It sounds large to me in any case.
It'd be a mega project.
And it will affect much more than the buffalo. The park would have to be empty of buffalo for a number of years to ensure every diseased animal was truly gone. And that would have a huge impact on all of the creatures who depend on buffalo, especially the wolves.
These are buffalo wolves, and they are really honed to kill the bison. And their food source vanishes, then the numbers will decrease very rapidly. You're eliminating them, and some will starve to death.
Brad Burke believes the park and its buffalo should finally be left alone.
If they were to, you know, send somebody in here to hunt a buffalo, I would be one guy that'd be standing in lines and saying first, you have to get through me first before you get to them, you know. Just that they've been here, you know, and I really believe in letting nature take its course.
That has rarely been allowed to happen in Wood Buffalo Park. Luke Arbin believes that history of intervention, along with the shift in native attitudes, could seal the buffalo's fate. And an ecosystem whose secrets we are only beginning to unravel will be lost.
It will affect and destroy a system, and that system is part of the national park's heritage that we have. And I think that's the element that I find very discouraging about what might happen, is that we may be destroying something that we don't understand at this stage. We think we have answers to problems, but when we look back at it, we really say, well, why did we do that?
For Country Canada, I'm Jim McQuarrie in Wood Buffalo National Park.